Hi, and welcome to Charger 360, telling the stories of the University of New Haven. I'm J.W. Stewart, along with Bruce Barber. Bruce, how you doing?
I'm doing so well because what a guest we have on this edition of Charger 360.
Bruce, as you know, Charger 360 is the official video podcast of the University of New Haven.
Yes.
But we are not the only podcast here on campus.
This is true.
And joining us to talk about his podcast and so much other subjects is Sebastian Trujillo Rodriguez. Sebastian, welcome to Charger 360.
Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor being here.
Now, this was my booking.
Again. You're on a hot streak now.
I'm on a roll. But Sebastian, what a joy to have you, because I'm over at the radio station. I try to just make the facilities available to the students. And then all of a sudden, with no input from me, we get these rock stars show up, and they are making J-Dub the most incredible podcast. Sebastian, tell us about it.
Yes, so it's called Mas Alla del Deporte. It's a podcast created by international student athletes for international student athletes or wannabe international student athletes. Alongside Albert Portas and Thomas Maynard, we came together to develop this idea that today is the podcast. And we found that a lot of people outside the United States do not understand or have no information about what the NCAA is and about all the opportunities attached to sports that the United States offers within the NCAA. And honestly, there's no place in the world that has a system like the NCAA, where you are able to represent your university, train and practice at the highest level in the best facilities, and pursue your academic career, right? So that sort of delays that decision making, or that point where you have to make a decision whether I want to be a professional athlete or whether I want to go into business or whatever I study. And we thought it was such a great experience that Albert had, that I had, and that so many more have had coming from different places of the world into the United States, that we wanted to share that with the younger generation that is making decisions and that does not know what's out there or what's here in the United States.
See?
Yeah.
So cool.
It is. I mean, we are very fortunate to have so many diverse students here at the University of New Haven. Sebastian, you're from Columbia.
Correct.
Right? MBA student. You were a former Division I athlete and
Correct.
Division II athlete, golfer, right? So you know this firsthand, the opportunity. As you said, this is something that only exists here in the United States. In Columbia, other countries around the world, if you go to university, if you're playing a sport,
that's it.
That's it, right? It is a club sport, maybe. It's not paying necessarily for education. But we value sports so much here in the United States, we build it into our educational model, both at the high school level, the college level, and going all the way back to elementary school. This is why we have physical education as part of our educational program here in the United States. So what we do here in the U.S. is big time. And we here at the University of New Haven have been fortunate to attract a lot of international students to play sports here. So, Sebastian, I wanted, before we get a little bit more into what you do at UNH and the podcast, I want you to tell the viewers here your path to UNH and what you were doing as a student athlete. Where were you before you got here?
Okay, so I graduated high school in Colombia. And golf is one of those few sports where you really see the best of the best from each country come to the United States to play, because a very high percentage of the PGA Tour players went through college. That's not necessarily true for other sports like soccer or tennis or whatever it may be. So I saw everybody that was older than me wanting to go to the United States and going there. So from when I was 12 years old, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. I hopped on that train. I dedicated myself to it. I learned English as best as I could, and then ended up being recruited to play in a Division II school in Illinois called University of Illinois Springfield. Went there for 3 years. COVID happened. They were cutting programs. We had no athletic director. We had no, our head coach was retiring. and they had just cut the program next door. We're like, okay, what do we do now? I hopped on the transfer portal, decided that if I was going to transfer, I was going D1 because my main goal was to get to the PGA Tour, win the Masters, and be the #1 player in the world. Transferred to the University of South Carolina in Upstate. Finished my 2 years there, got double majored in business marketing and management. And in that last year, I started getting some doubts, and I didn't play up to my standard. And I decided to take a step back and not pursue golf as a profession. Instead, I decided to get my master's, but I didn't want to pay for it, so I decided to be the graduate assistant of the University of New Haven golf program. And that's where I'm at, and I'm graduating very soon.
Wow, what a great story. And you know, what a self-starter you were to learn English, decide that path. And I think it's a great lesson, right, for all students that, I always tell students this, that it's important to have a path, a goal, but I think it's equally important to be willing to deviate from that path or goal because it's such a transformational time in your life, right? And you discover other skills and other interests. So that's wonderful to hear. Now what was it? Of course, I'm always going to bring it back to the podcast. But tell us a little about how that came about and how it's developed. It's happened very quickly, and it's become very successful very quickly.
Yes. So the podcast has reached more people than what we expected at the beginning, which is always good news. We have been doing this for maybe 2 months. Just gonna be over 2 months. And we are on the 2nd season already. We have 12 episodes on our 1st season, and now we are on our 4th episode. I just filmed our 4th episode of this season. We have guests from all over the world, most of them student athletes, some of them exchange students in the business sports management programs that came from Spain, and we had them. And that was one of the best videos that we have had, because the short videos, the reels that we put on Instagram have gotten a bunch of views.
And you know, of course, I'm seated next to an ESPN anchor right here.
And my professor.
Former, yeah, and yes.
And your
And one of
professor.
Sebastian's professors, yes.
You know.
Why do you think the podcast has been so successful so quickly?
Perhaps because there was a gap in the market. There's a lot of information in English about what the NCAA is, about what should a kid do in order to get recruited. But that's not the case in Spanish, right? Most of our audience is in Spanish. We do have a few episodes in English, which I have shared with Bruce.
Yeah.
But most of our audience is in Spanish, and it's those people that don't really know what's going on here, the ones that get captivated, and the ones that keep watching it.
And you know what's great is I got a chance to watch a few episodes. And I love it when our students collaborate, you know, students from different areas of the campus. So talk about Thomas Maynard, who is your producer. J-Dub, I've got to tell you something. This podcast is so professionally produced. It's amazing, and it does my heart good.
Thomas is outstanding. Honestly, we are super lucky to have him. He is our camera genius, right? Because neither Albert or I have the expertise that he does with cameras, with microphones, editing the frames, synchronizing the sound, which we do, right? But Thomas has learned, because he didn't know everything at the beginning, but throughout this process of the podcast, he has learned a lot, and he has gotten really good at it, which makes me happy as well to see how good he has gotten from season 1, for example, to season 2, how fast he's doing the edition. It takes us now probably half the time that it took us at the beginning to edit a podcast. So we're super lucky to have Thomas.
And Thomas is a freshman. I think that's the biggest thing. We talk about getting involved here, experiential education, University of New Haven, right? Rolling your sleeves up, you know, getting your hands dirty and diving right in. freshman coming right in and doing this. And again, MBA student, you've been here how long?
2 years.
2 years?
This is going to be my second year.
So, but the fact that you can get here to our campus and get involved, whether it's 2 years or whether it's the time you walk in as a freshman, is really incredible. That says a lot about what the opportunities that exist here at UNH.
That's exactly right. And tell the story about how you got Thomas involved. He was just walking through the station, right? He's got a show. He's a young man after my own heart because he loves classic rock. And I'm of that era. So tell us about how that worked out.
Well, the existence of this podcast we have to attribute to Gabriela Garcia Perez, because she was the one that put Albert and me in contact to start the podcast. The same day that Albert and I met, Thomas was doing his show at the radio station. So we show up with Albert, we start sketching out how this is gonna look like, what are we gonna do. And then for whatever, I think Gabi perhaps had a show as well, right before Thomas. So
Yes.
all four of us were in the same building at the same time. It just happened to be. And then Thomas was done with his episode, or walking in, and Gabi was walking out, and we all said hi, we all introduced each other. And Gabi was like, you guys are doing a podcast. He's a student, he's studying filmmaking. You guys should get together. Yeah. And then we got Thomas in the room, and then we just kept going.
Networking and connections, we talk about that a lot at the University of New Haven. If you're a fan of the show, you might remember Gabby Garcia Perez was a guest last season, if memory serves. But this is how things work here at the University of New Haven, right? People introduce one another like this. This is how connections happen naturally. Bruce, you know this better than anybody because you've done radio for a long time and we're on the beginning of podcasting. Podcasting just used to be audio only. But now it can't be, right? You have to have this video component, it seems like.
Well, it can be either. That's what I think is so interesting. And it's been so, it just blows my mind, the fact that I've had the opportunity to watch an entire media platform grow out of thin air. And the background with podcasting is that it started off with something called an RSS feed, which is basically HTML is the code that is what websites, how they render. But there was something, RSS feeds were invented as a way to send a separate stream of code to say, hey, there's new content available. And then it was actually one of the people that first used it was Adam Curry, who used to be he was a VJ on MTV. But he said, well, how about if we took audio content and produced that content and used that RSS feed, which is short for really simple syndication. We use that feed to alert people that there are these new episodes. And so it grew first as an audio medium, but then just on its own morphed into, so actually it doesn't have to be video, but that seems to be a very popular aspect of it. So it doesn't really have a label on it. It's just grown really organically into this incredible thing. And it's just so great that you're using it as a visual medium because, for example, I've seen there's shots of you playing golf, right? And it's great that you are able, and you use Thomas to integrate that extra footage.
Correct. The the visual portion of our podcast is super key because we wanted to be able to put our content on social media as well. If you only have the sound, it's not as appealing on Instagram or on TikTok. So being able to see the person that's speaking with the microphone and with the headphones on makes it just that much more appealing for people to be like, what is this about?
Wow.
I imagine on the show you guys talk about so many different subjects. One's got to be culture shock, right? If you are an international student coming here to the United States, what was your biggest culture shock coming to the United States, whether it was here at UNH or at any of your previous schools?
I went to a really small high school in Colombia. I graduated with 18 others. I got to the University of Illinois in Springfield that I think at the time had maybe 2,000 students. And I thought everything was huge. The gym was amazing. The infrastructure in the United States was just remarkable. And then I was sitting down in the gym waiting to meet my head coach, my very first head coach in the United States. And then the volleyball team walks in. and I just see these towering, tall ladies, and I'm like, where am I? I have to say, people in Colombia are much shorter than people in the United States. And I was just truly amazed, number one, by the building where I was at, which is the infrastructure, and number two, by the size of the people here.
Wow, wow. Well, let me just say, Sebastian, it's, I know JW feel exactly the same way, that just the joy for us is having students like you, and there are many more on campus, but it's just a joy, and we're so glad you're here.
I am truly lucky to be here with you guys. I actually took JW's class as an optional class.
Yep.
I was done with 2 more classes, and then I said I want to take 1 more.
Wise move.
I have to have JW as one of my professors. So
Yes.
I have him. And
Well,
I'm
thank you,
very happy.
Sebastian. It's great to meet you. Thanks for being on the show. Again, for our viewers, give them the name of the podcast, please.
It's Mas Alla del Deporte. We are on Instagram, we are on Spotify, and we are on YouTube.
And translated from Spanish, that means what?
That means Beyond Sports.
Very good. Sebastian Trujillo Rodriguez, podcast host, MBA student, men's and women's grad assistant golf coach here at the University of New Haven,
Professional golfer.
professional golfer,
Yeah.
and a giant in his own right. Sebastian, it's great to see you. Thanks again for being here on the show. We look forward to seeing you again and continued success with your podcast.
Thank you for having me.
For Sebastian, for Bruce Barber, I'm JW Stewart. Thanks for watching Charger 360, telling the stories of the University of New Haven. If you're interested in being on the show, email Bruce or myself, bbarber@newhaven.edu or jstewart@newhaven.edu. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.